The US, just as it did in the 1930s and 1970s, will solve its financial problems at the expense of the entire world.
We've gone through at least 3 to 4 boom-bust cycles within that 5-year period. We went through the COVID lockdown, which shut down markets. Then we lowered interest rates and pumped the economy when there was no productivity going on around the world, meaning supply chains were shut down. Everybody was forced in their homes. But what did the Fed do and what did economies do around the world is they flooded the economy with new money. Over 60% of all the money in the United States was printed in the span of 1 year.
By 2053, the average medium household income for Black Americans will be down to 0. By 2073, the average household medium income for Latino Americans will be down to 0. That'd be largely due to AI.
People who are not realizing this, they're about to lose their jobs.
Right now they have a $35 trillion currency debt. They move it into crypto, into the cloud, devalue it, and start from scratch.
The economy, especially the US, is driven by spending. So if you stop spending, you stop the growth of GDP. However, people who are spending are not able to save.
Russia is now in Cuba setting up a war base. Right now, World War III looks like it's on the cusp of happening. If you don't set yourself up properly, there will be a day where you will wish that you set yourself up properly.
With $5 trillion expected to be pumped into the economy, we have to be very careful with the decisions we make. We're going through what wasn't officially labeled as a recession in 2024. There were over 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. Technically, that's a recession. But you know what? They changed the definition, and the powers that be can do that.
Guys, we are one decision away, one president away, one war away from everything being different.
And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
All right, guys, so with the UK Prime Minister mandating that every single individual, every single citizen in the UK must have a digital ID in order to work. I don't care what religion you are, what your denomination is. The reality is that we are getting very close to biblical prophecy taking place. And in this podcast, you are going to learn how to prepare financially in the event of an economic emergency. My name is King Edwards. I am the founder of High Ticket Offer Financing and now a proud partner at Yellow Brick Financial. I am here with the CEO and founder, Gene Santos of Yellow Brick Financial. Is there anything you want to say before we get started?
I've got to say I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to have this conversation. It's more important now than ever with everything on the horizon, financially, economically, with our experience, with our expertise, what we're licensed to do. We are going to set you up for success, to set you up to win in this situation.
Guys, make sure you have your pen and your paper ready because this call is going to be very unorthodox. We're not going to go into this call and just sell you on a bunch of products. No, we're going to explain to you exactly what we believe is going to happen in the economy and how to prepare. And we look forward to working with those of you who decide to work with Yellow Brick Financial and High Ticket Offer Financing. Let's get right into it.
Right now, it's more important to have this conversation now more than ever, right? It's a very profound conversation. The timing is impeccable. I've seen things and I've experienced things in the last 5 years I've never experienced in my entire life. 2020. Not only was there a global pandemic, but there was an economic shift in the world. And the way things are moving, people are not recognizing that right now. Right? 2008, there was a massive market crash, housing crash that affected the global economy. There were firms and there were global economies investing in the US housing market, and it all came toppling down. So after those after 2008, 2009, for the next 10 years, the market just started skyrocketing, right? Now, when it hit 2020, we came through a global pandemic, boom, market crashed. And within the span of 5 years, we're in 2025, present day, we've gone through at least 3 to 4 boom bust cycles within that 5-year period. We went through the COVID lockdown, which shut down markets. Then we lowered interest rates and pumped the economy when there was no productivity going on around the world, meaning supply chains were shut down. Everybody was forced in their homes. But what did the Fed do and what did economies do around the world is they flooded the economy with new money. Over 60% of all the money in the United States, the dollar, the most powerful currency, was printed in the span of 1 year. So during that time, I was thinking to myself, it was a thought process. I was even talking to professionals, entrepreneurs. I said, okay, with all this, inflation has to go up, right? With all this new money flowing around, it has to go up. So the value of the dollar is going to go down. Interest rates were an all-time low. People were buying houses. But rather than save, people spend on lifestyle inflation. With an influx of cash, were people recognizing the time they were in, or were they recognizing the cash that they had in their pockets and their bank accounts?
Now, I want you guys to really understand what this massive quantitative easing, which is what you call excessive money printing, that devalues the dollar aggressively.
Right.
But what does that mean for you as an individual who's actually using the US dollar, right? What that meant to me is that we actually need to begin thinking about where are we placing our money? How are we using the money that we're getting today? Because in the next 4, 5, 10 years, the value of that money is going to be drastically different. The purpose of this video is to help you prepare for an economic state of emergency that is coming, right? Whether you are paying attention to this or not, you need to be. You are here for a reason. This is not by mistake, because we believe that this is one of the last chances that you will have to prepare for what is to come. I was telling Gene on the way here today that we are one decision away, one president away from everything being different. Now, let's talk about what that means, right? Whether you like Donald Trump or not, let's just be clear. UK is about 6 to 8 hours away, and they just put a federal mandate that everybody has to have a digital ID in order to work. Okay, in Cuba, which is just a few miles off our coast, few hundred miles off our coast, Russia is now in Cuba setting up a war base. Right now, World War III looks like it's on the cusp of happening, right? And we have a military base from an opposition just a couple hundred miles off our coast, right? The dollar being devalued at the same time, BRICS currency being aggressively not adopted, but the attempt for mass world adoption is there. It's knocking at our heels. To understand that the U.S. is the #1 global economy right now, but China is right on our heels, and they are leading the charge with Russia for this BRICS currency to be put in place. This is not something that we need to be taking lightly, right? You have cryptocurrency that is being put into effect right now. The United States just signed an act called the Big Beautiful Bill Act, which essentially will be the next quantitative easing that's happening in the United States. $5 trillion will be pumped into the economy through debt, right? And we will talk about how to use those debts and how to use insurance in this time to actually prepare for what is to come next.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because all major shifts in world power are based off economics. I'm a history buff myself. I love finding out what has happened in the past, because history repeats itself, and if it doesn't repeat itself, it's something very similar. So, let's look at what you just mentioned. We're on the cusp of what feels like World War III. Things can happen. There's countries fighting each other. There's Russia and Ukraine, right? So there's one bad decision away before everybody steps into a conflict. quick history lesson. When we talk about World War II, Germany was going through a period of hyperinflation. They used to have to literally carry buckets of cash around just to buy fruits and vegetables. Because of that, they nationalized, created a war machine, and started the series of events that led to what happened. Now, we have to be very aware of, we're in a very specific economic time. Right now, the economic power is the US. More importantly, it's the US dollar. All business internationally is settled with the US dollar. However, many countries are becoming nervous with the US dollar and how the powers that be are using the US dollar to control certain countries, to control economics, to force their influence on certain countries. So we see a division happening economically. We see world powers that are looking to compete with the US dollar, right? So now, because of that, we're seeing economic cycles happen faster than ever. 2008, it took 10 years before we saw the next crash. In 5 years, we saw 3 to 4 boom bust cycles. So let's take that into account. When the good times are happening right now, what's natural is people get into a state of euphoria. They think they're going to last forever. They think, okay, the good times are going to keep rolling. But you know what? Then inflation happens. Then we have to raise interest rates. And now we're back into a recession and everybody's freaking out. So people are just becoming subjects to the forces at hand, and they don't realize it.
Now, I want to pinpoint something that you said, because I think that it's so powerful. Because yes, countries are de-dollarizing in real time, or attempting to de-dollarize in real time, and that just means not settle their transactions in US dollar.
Exactly.
We're not just dealing with a recession, right? We're not just dealing with hyperinflation, possibly with quantitative easing. No, we're dealing with that on top of the de-dollarization of many countries around the world from the US dollar. On top of that, what does this mean to me? That means, once again, that we are one decision away, one war away, one president away from everything being different. And when it's different this time, guys, it's not like this difference that we're talking about. And the reason why Gene and I are having this conversation with you today is not because this difference is one that's going to be like 2008. You guys lived through that, right? 2008, there was a crash, there was quantitative easing, right? And the economy eventually recovered from that. What's happening now is a complete toppling of the U.S. economy as we know it, right? What happened with COVID in 2020 was a demonstration for potentially what is going to happen next.
With $5 trillion expected to be pumped into the economy, we have to be very careful with the decisions we make. We're going through what wasn't officially labeled as a recession in 2024. There were over 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. Technically, that's a recession. But you know what? They changed the definition, and the powers that be can do that, right? So making people really not freak out. Remember that the economy, especially the US, is driven by spending. So if you stop spending, you stop the growth of GDP. Someone spending is somebody else's paycheck, right? So it's very important that people spend. However, people who are spending are not able to save. And with what's going on right now, we have to remember how we're positioning our assets, how we're positioning our lifestyle, how we're positioning our health. You know, with the change of food supply, with a growing population, with all the things you're hearing, it's not a time, and I have to make people aware of this because I see this all the time. It is not a time to, when there's inflation, meaning there's more money to be pumped into the economy, it's not a time to have lifestyle inflation, meaning buy more depreciating assets, buy more things that aren't generally adding value to your overall portfolio, to your family, to your health. It is more important to stay on point, because if things change that fast, you're going to be left behind. Let's take a look at AI. This is something very profound. Things are moving so fast right now. People who are not realizing this, they're about to lose their jobs. If human capacity and human productivity is going to be obsolete because of technology, what are you going to do?
Let's go through some of the numbers, because I want you to keep going, but I actually want
Absolutely.
to reinforce what you just said with some stats. I was looking at, in 2020, I read an article from theguardian.com, and here's the stats that I was able to research from them and several other sources. Number one, by 2053, the average medium household income for Black Americans will be down to 0. By 2073, the average household medium income for Latino Americans will be down to 0. That will be largely due to AI. AI will be responsible, according to research, by 2032, guys, that is less than 7 years from now. By 2032, they are saying that 70 million American jobs will be lost due to AI, right? That's about 1/3 of the entire U.S. will lose their job because of artificial intelligence, okay? 300 million people globally will lose their jobs because of artificial intelligence by 2032. Now, I want you guys to understand what's on the cusp after artificial intelligence is artificial super intelligence, or artificial general intelligence, then artificial super intelligence, which means what? Artificial intelligence, the AI just gets smarter and smarter, and you become, in the eyes of AI, potentially, right, more and more useless, right? We don't need you to work because AI is doing all of the jobs. Right? So what are you here for? These are the things that we actually need to be discussing. And as out of this world as this sounds, right? As sci-fi as this sounds, as Terminator as this sounds, as iRobot as this sounds, Gene, the reality is that we're here. Right? And we can't ignore what we're seeing. We can't ignore ChatGPT, OpenAI. We can't ignore Grok, Claude. We can't ignore any of this. It means more than just a tool that we're using to ask questions to. Like, they're trying to build a artificial super intelligence that ultimately will run economies globally.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, right, and everybody is adopting it, right? We have all the tech giants coming together in the U.S. to build new energy infrastructure all over the U.S. because the whole country, the United States, and global economies are preparing for this move. The current energy grid system cannot handle the amount of energy it takes to use AI. So the fact that we're seeing superpowers create these energy grid systems, corporations all coming together to do that, means there is a change that's happening. This is something that we can't fight against. This is something, in fact, we have to embrace, right? So it makes me think about economics and where we are right now. We are in a free market capitalist society. The biggest superpowers in the world have free markets. They have corporations building that are going after profits, right? So free markets can be a double-edged sword. One is when you have a free market and there's profit in whatever industry it is, the free market is going to make innovations and create solutions for that market because of profit. But also the double-edged sword is we have to remember it is for profit. So whatever makes the most profit, it doesn't matter if it's hurting people, if it's good for people, what makes the most profit will prevail. So we have to remember that if human capacity and human productivity is not profitable, then that is going to become obsolete. It is going to be replaced. We had a very powerful conversation about just a new economic school of thought, right? And with the state that we're in, right, there's a couple major economists that I follow and I studied. Karl Marx, which was the father of, say, communism, where it's a very socialist type of economy where it doesn't matter what kind of professional you are, the income is going to be spread out across society, but that also leaves a lot of room for corruption. Now, it's a small group who have the power eventually controlling everybody because of how the money is distributed. Then you have the prevailing thought, which is what China has adopted, from going from communist to this hybrid communist free market capitalist and now capitalist society, and now they're becoming a world superpower, which is let's push this. We're going to control the industry, but we're going to create markets and make sure our companies are making as much profit as we can. So what's happening is, in this new mindset, with your background, King, I had the chance to work with you. You're sitting on the side that is controlling the flow of money that goes into the US right now. You're sitting on that side. I'm sitting on the side that is hedging against risk. As long as there's risk, there's always going to be insurance. As long as there's money, there's always going to be loans and banks. Right? So we have to be able to position ourselves in this new mindset, in this new economy, so we don't get left behind. I want to repeat this because it's very profound to me. If our productivity becomes obsolete, what can we use? Right? So we know that the banks are always going to loan. We know that we're always going to hedge against risk, and we know that there's always going to be markets.
Now, I'm glad you brought this up because I actually, Gene, very quickly, I wanted to just go into our background slightly and just, communicate with you guys about how we got here, right? And our backgrounds, how we got here, and what essentially gives us this authoritative perspective on this topic. So I am been in the funding industry or the finance industry for about 12 years now. I started off in real estate specifically, funding real estate deals through banks and through private lenders. Built this incredible private lender network, built an incredible bank loan network, and was able to fund millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate. Well, once I shifted into another gear due to just a splitting with the partners and things not going right, if you guys read our book, you will understand more details about this, right? But ultimately, due to things not going right with those real estate projects, I decided to diversify into a multitude of different industries, right? Crypto, e-com, etc. And as I was investing into all of these different industries, I realized that there was always just something going on. Like, I thought diversification, the way I was doing it, was the key to success. But when you own a car business and you own rental properties, if something goes wrong with the rental properties, now you're using the money from the car business to pay it. If something goes wrong with the cars, you're using the money from the rental properties to pay it. And as you go through this, you kind of realize that, okay, well, this is great, but when you crunch the numbers, you're kind of like at a net break even, but everything looks amazing, right? So I wanted to know how to invest and how to be more financially savvy. I started praying about it. I started really trying to seek out answers on how I could improve my life, because on the outside, guys, my life was amazing. I mean, I'm in every car that you can possibly think of, going to all these different places, but really I was not where I felt that I should be. And on my 35th birthday, I remember really just, internally I was crying, right? Because I was going through my 35th birthday and I really just had lost everything that I had worked for. I spent my entire 20s and even my early 30s building up what I thought was going to be a very successful organization, and it was for a time. And then when things changed, I wasn't prepared for what was going to happen next. And as an entrepreneur, you kind of never really think about what's going to happen next. You're in the moment, especially once you hit that stride, you start making money. You think that train is never going to stop. Then 2020 happens, right? And they start printing money even more aggressively. Now, you guys who have worked with us before, I started off in the funding industry before I came to insurance, and we're still in that industry to this day. And the quantitative easing that happened in 2020 really made our business thrive. I mean, we were, helping everybody get loans, and we're still helping everyone get loans. And we were able to work with a lot of great entrepreneurs, which was fantastic. But during that time, you start to see the same boom bust cycles that you're discussing. We're talking about the overvaluation of cars, people spending all of these money at the clubs and on businesses and just not really thinking about what they're doing financially during this time. So we're printing money and pushing the money into the economy, and then we're also seeing what individuals are doing with it. I, like many individuals, thought that the economy had changed, thought that America was back. So let's spend it like we're back.
Exactly.
Let's do this like we're back. And then they did the quantitative tightening, which essentially means, so quantitative easing is putting the money into the economy. Quantitative tightening is taking the money out of the economy. In 2023, we saw the crypto market crash. We also saw a lot of these different platforms that we were all involved in, the hyperverses, the Nvidias, going down left and right, putting people in a bad financial position that a lot of us are still trying to get out of to this day. Right. And the reason why we're here is because a new bill in 2020, a bill was passed and money was printed. In 2025, a bill was passed and money is about to be printed again. And then I want you to go and tell your story, G. But I was just thinking to myself about 6 months ago. I said, they're really giving us another chance to do this right. Right? They're really giving us another chance to do this right. Now, guys, when you guys really connect with me and Gene, you'll realize, I really like to predict what's going to happen. I won't do that on this podcast unless Gene gives me the green light. Because if I say it first and it happens, then, but you have to give me some type of props for that. But what I will say from just a general standpoint, and I want you to really think about this for what it means, because I'm saying it in a literal sense. I believe that we are having another chance to do 2020 the right way. Right? Now, you take that how you want. Does that mean another flu is coming? I don't know. Does that mean, but we do know that there is a lot of money that's being printed into the economy. We do know that. We do know what that will do to the markets. We know that the markets are going to skyrocket. We can say that the crypto market will skyrocket for a time. We will say that the stock market will skyrocket for a time. But at some point, that time will be over and that rug will be pulled and that economy will collapse, or something will collapse. That dollar will collapse. And when that happens, what will you do? How will you prepare? And that thought of how to prepare properly is what led me to Yellow Brick Financial in the first place, what led me to trying to understand insurance in a more comprehensive way. How do I insure my money? I was watching a podcast or an interview with Warren Buffett a couple years ago, and Warren Buffett said something that I'll never forget. The interviewer asked him, they said, Warren, if you had to give any entrepreneur advice, new entrepreneur advice, what would be the number one piece of advice that you would give them? And what Warren Buffett said was very simple. He said, rule number one, never lose your money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. Now, as an investor, right? I mean, you guys have to think about this. I mean, I just was investing, right? My investments weren't panning out exactly as I anticipated. We all learned that investing is risky. So how can the world's greatest investor somehow have a hack to tell me not to lose any money when everybody else has been telling me that don't invest what you're not willing to lose? It's a totally different philosophy. And is his philosophy the reason why he is the greatest investor of all time? What did he figure out? Well, when I did some research after I started partnering up and working with Yellow Brick Financial, I did some research and I realized, man, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, is actually one of the top insurance holders in the world. At least at the time they were. Over 300 billion shares of Geico owned by this gentleman. When you understand money from a more dynamic perspective, you understand that money is not just one dimensional, guys. Money is three dimensional. And this is something that I prayed over and received that information. There was no other reason why that information was presented to me. But when it was presented to me, right, where I understood that money was more than one dimensional, it was three dimensional, right? That you had to learn how to earn it, you had to learn how to protect it, you had to learn how to grow it. Then I realized that the reason why Warren Buffett is the most successful investor of all time is because he mastered protecting his investment before he invested. Mm-hmm. So really, when we're talking about impacting entrepreneurs, impacting everybody, right? Because everybody needs to insure their money. Everybody's going, as you said, Gene, the banks will always lend, right? People will always need to insure. The markets will always be available as well. We know this, right? So no matter what happens in the world, we know that the banks will always lend, the markets will always be open, and we will always need to insure things. When an investor like Warren Buffett says, never lose your money, and there's only three pillars that make up the financial system, then obviously there's a pillar that we need to learn, right, as investors, entrepreneurs, as everyday people, that will allow us to protect our money, protect our wealth, pass money down for generations to come, grow our net worth during an economic state of emergency. Because guess what? As the banks collapse, the insurance companies are independent. The insurance companies are private, which means that your money is more safe with an insurance policy than it is staying in the bank. Now, you guys may not know, right, that your money in the bank is only federally insured up to $250,000. Maybe you don't have $250,000 left in the bank, or maybe you do. If you have more than $250,000 in an asset that is only protected up to $250,000, well, what are you doing with the rest of that money? Because it's only making 0.007% in that account. So why is it there? It's not even insured. As a matter of fact, why do you have an excess amount of money in your bank account anyway? Why isn't it protected? Why isn't it growing in the market tax-free? Why isn't it doing that? What do you need it there for? Right? The reality is, what I'm saying is that there's a smarter way. Listen, here's the stats, guys. 86% of all entrepreneurs earn less than $100,000 per year. 98.1% earn less than $1 million per year. Those are the stats. Now, we can look at those numbers and say, hey, we can act like, the goal is to become a millionaire. But let's be honest here. When I see Warren Buffett buying 300 billion shares of Geico, we're playing the wrong game. We're trying to become millionaires, but these individuals, and we're trying to earn millions. These individuals, we're not even talking about how much money they earn. We're talking about their net worth. We're talking about the assets that they own. We're talking about how they're protecting their wealth. That is the difference. So in order for us to even get into a space where we can protect ourselves against what is to come, we actually have to implement the foundation of finance into our personal ecosystems, into our personal lives. And as an entrepreneur who's been through ups and downs in a very aggressive way, I came to yellow brick. Like, I sought out yellow brick because I knew, and take it from me, maybe some of you guys may have made a lot more money than I have in my career. Some of you guys may have made a lot less money than I have in my career. Take it from me. Regardless, if you don't set yourself up properly, there will be a day where you will wish that you set yourself up properly.
Wow. I got to say, that was that made me, although we've had this conversation, it made me really think about everything over again, because we are just in such an interesting time, right? If we're taking a look at basic economics, right, it's usually we go through an expansion period, a peak period, a recession period, and then we go through a trough, right? And We've come from a recession period, and we're going through a trough right now where the markets are starting to pick up. We're getting another chance to do this right. We can't bet that these chances are going to come again, right? We are not playing the game. We're not just playing some random game. We are playing a game that has some serious players in it that have been doing this for generations. Institutions, markets, AI, they're all studying human behavior. We are moving through a whole shift, a new shift, a school of economic thought. People used to be able to depend on having a career, can raise a family of 4 or 5 off having one job. One person can raise a whole family off having one job. Corporations are no longer doing that. They're no longer offering pensions, solid retirement plans. Inflation the dollar is losing its value. The more it gets pumped, the more it loses its value. So it makes me think, because I started my career in 2013, and then I started my company in 2019, thinking, okay, I had it all figured out. Then COVID hit, and in 2020, everything changed. I had to shift my whole mindset, my whole business model. And you know what? I was able to adapt, and it worked. But you know what? It was also a blessing and a curse at the same time. Because of the amount of money that was pumped into the economy at that time, I was winning as a business. There were new challenges I was faced, but also, as you mentioned, all this money made me think I was some kind of genius investor, that I knew everything was going to happen, when I was just flowing with this river that was just pushing everything up. Now, when it comes down to it, there were a couple of things that worked. I was investing my money in risky assets. I was able to leverage the system, getting loans from banks, and I was making money there. Now, when everything started crashing in 2022 to 2023, right, the things that stood the test of time were the insurance pillars I set up in place, was the ability where I didn't over leverage myself. I used what I needed to use to be as productive as possible. There were things in the market I put my money into that didn't work, and there were things in the market that I put my money into that did work. So coming from that, I realized, okay, if I were to do this again, what would I do? How would I position my assets again? And I think this conversation is more important than ever because of everything that's changing. And, we were talking about the banks, we were talking about the bank run. Remember, in 2020, also something changed. So the fractional reserve system, which is what the banks are allowed to loan, before they had to have a reserve. So for every dollar that they were to lend out, they had to have $1 in reserve. Now they don't have to have any dollars in reserve to lend out the money. That's why in 2023, the bank run happened. Silicon Valley Bank. Millions and millions of dollars. People were freaked out by the economy. They started going to the bank to all withdraw. But guess what? Because there were no reserves, the bank wasn't able to pay out those withdrawals. So what happened? The government had to come in and bail them out. You had Chase Bank at this time buy the little bank, buy all the assets for pennies to the dollar. These things are happening. These major power moves are being made every day. Are you going to make the decision to be a free thinker and position yourself in the right way? Or are you just going to be thrashed around by these economic forces, these currents that are happening all around us? Are you going to depend on a corporation? Are you going to depend on your job only? Or are you going to take advantage of AI? Are you going to take advantage of technology? Are you going to take advantage of the opportunities at hand to create more resources for yourself, to build new skill sets? Because if you're not doing that now, if you're not preparing yourself, then you are going to get left behind. And that's the sense of urgency that I have. That is something that sometimes can make me anxious, can sometimes make me nervous. But being aware of that also makes me confident, also gives me light at the end of the tunnel that we are recognizing these things, that we are having these conversations. I had to take a step back from social media. I had to take a step back from entertainment because of how fast things are moving. When you take yourself out of the frame and you look at the picture as a whole, then you can slow things down a little bit and say, okay, what decisions am I making right now for myself, for my family? I got to say this, people are not having families the way they used to right now. Why? Because mostly it's because of security. Without the ability, when people are thinking how to make, or living paycheck to paycheck, or thinking about what am I going to do tomorrow, that creates a sense of fear, and now the family unit, now the things that matter are no longer in place. So we see all sorts of bad decisions made, people losing sense of morals, right? And these are things I personally believe that we have to go back to, that we have to create a strong foundation, right? And not be influenced from everything we see on social media, from all these dopamine receptors, that we have to come back to a sense of delayed gratification, right? We look at social media, we look at what's going on. Now there's Instagram shorts, there's YouTube shorts. Everything is so short. Everything is so short. So our attention spans are that short. What are we doing? Are we making the right decisions, or are the things that we're watching making decisions for us? It's that profound. Sometimes it's just having that perspective on things that can help us make the right decision. Who are you associating yourself with? Who are you listening to? What conversations are you having? And the story that you shared is making me think about all the experiences that I have. My background being in insurance, meeting you with high ticket offer financing and what you were doing, I had the insurance piece down. My career started in retirement planning and insurance, and then moved into assets under management. I thought it was just a product to sell, until I saw the most wealthy people creating generational wealth, creating legacies, trust fund kids, all using products and tools available that have been available. They know how to play the game. When I met you, I found the missing piece, which was financing. If you don't have the money, what do the wealthy do? They borrow it. What do they borrow it and do? They don't spend it on liabilities. They borrow the money and spend it on assets. Assets that are going to pay back the financing, assets that are going to build their net worth. And then what do? They repeat this cycle over and over and over again. And before you know it, there's a compounding effect, and they become wealthy. Their kids don't have to worry about anything. Their grandkids don't have to worry about anything. And those grandkids don't have to worry about anything. So how far are you thinking in the future? Because your future self is going to thank you for the decision you're making now.
Absolutely.
Right. So, that I had to say that it was a very powerful testimonial you're sharing, and it's more important than ever.
Listen, I know, guys, that this call was very unorthodox for a financial call, right? But the purpose of this call was to let you know that right now is the time to make a decision. We don't have time. We don't know how much time we have before everything goes belly up. We've seen this movie already. We've seen the quantitative easing. We've seen the markets go up. We've seen the money printed. We've made all the bad decisions already. It's time to make sure we make the right decision. Guys, we are one decision away, one president away, one war away from everything being different. BRICS is here. Quantitative easing is here. Crypto is here. AI is here. And the thing is, they're not going anywhere. They're here to stay, which means that everything we've known up until this point will be different going forward. So as someone who can actually relate to you, right? Because I sought out Yellow Brick, right, for protection over my money. to understand how to utilize this service in my own life, to understand how to replicate what the Warren Buffetts of the world are doing. Right? So take it from me. This is something, whoever brought you to this call, make sure you go back and talk to them about how, what Yellow Brick does, how you can get started with us. Right? And if you don't have the money, then you can contact us about funding as well. We can help you. But the time to make the decision is absolutely now.